The flower is ready. Here are the flowers that turn out. So, now, what do we need to do? Since we have flowers, buds are prepared, we need to roll a small piece of wire with clay. And we will do the same on all the flowers. To do this, we will use an extruder again, but only with light green clay. So, I mixed this light green clay. You can do the same. A very small amount of green paint. I added a grass green one. It turned out such a light green color. Now, I put it back in the extruder. This colored clay. Here. And now we will run the stems around. So we have buds. We take a small amount. Glue, of course. We mix it carefully. And with such movements, I roll it out neatly along the wire with these twisting movements. What do we need to do? We need to make it as thin as possible, to have a thin wire but green clay. Therefore, we try to run as thinly as possible. We remove the surplus. The distance should be approximately 7 millimeters. 7-8 millimeters. Because we will not make stems that are too long. They should be fairly short, especially in buds that are at the very beginning. So, I glue, and I run them around carefully with these movements. We try to distribute the clay evenly so that we don't have to wash it, because if there are any errors, it won't be very beautiful. Therefore, when we run around, we try to lower the clay down with our fingers, as if stretching it. The surplus again is removed. So, at the base of the flower, you must necessarily smear it with glue. Dip it again in clay and roll it in. So, here's what happens. I will already run through all the flowers that we have the lengths to show. How it turns out. Or at least a couple more. In general, the thickness of the stem should be 1.52 millimeters. Preferably a thin one. Let's have one more and that's it. Now I will make a bud. The joint location so that it is very flat. The joint between bud and clay here. So that there is no sharp transition, so that everything is smooth. the stem and the transition from the stem to the bud or flower. So, here is another blank we have. That's all. And we naturally do the same with all the other flowers, buds. Make a blank like that. And leave it to dry a little, and after drying, we will already collect fully. Make an assembly. Here they are our preparations. Dried up a little. Now you can collect them. So, to begin with, why did I make the legs so long? On a long wire. We will assemble on one main long wire and will alternate flowers to fasten to each other. Attaching, but we won't use floristic tape, since the tape thickens the stem strongly. Therefore, I will show you how I do it by carefully fastening thin wires with just clay. So, this will require all the same glue, extruder. And now I took the clay. I mixed it out of the screen. I added a little more green paint to the light green clay, grass green, in order to make the shade a little more saturated. That is, the color will differ from this green color by 2-3 tones darker, because the stem itself is darker. What are we doing? I take a small amount of clay. I take the smallest buds. Immediately you can bend one bud and connect it like this. I begin to carefully fasten it with clay. First I smear with glue. Take a drop of glue and just attach my finger so that they do not detach, because it is immediately 2 wires. Therefore, this should be done very carefully, so that they do not move out, do not separate, and together gently touch. Like this. Connect it. First, just connect with your fingers. We form it. We tighten it up a little. Then carefully holding it here, gently lower it down. Here's a little tweak. You can carefully wash all this process with water later. Since the clay is quite soft, even with this movement, just with your fingers, it does not leave such obvious errors. That is, a fairly smooth trunk is obtained. So, here's what happens. The remainder will be removed a little here, the surplus. Well, the distance is about 1.3 centimeters. Approximately. Well, we can try it on now. In general, this is done by eye. It is not necessary to adhere to any rules. About 2 centimeters. So, now, we take the next bud. First we bend it a little. I bend it like that, and it is now necessary to connect the wires in a staggered order. If one bud is located on the right side, then the next one should be attached on the left side. In this way approximately. So, I take a small amount of clay again. Of course, you can still remove a little more. It's a little long. Now I will remove the excess. So, we cover it with glue. Now I apply the bud. And again I apply clay. I press it carefully and I begin to lower them down with these twisting movements. Try to make it quite subtle. So, now, you can even immediately bend a little, then we will adjust the buds in which direction they should look. So, now, the next bud. Again, I bend. I will prepare two. So, I take clay, a small amount. I take the smaller bud. Now the right side will be fixed. I smear it with glue. Join. Thus. And I press it with clay. I sort of wrap my arms around the wire. Gently press to wrap around the wire immediately, so that the wire is not visible at least. Everything should be very neat. We tighten it up a little. So, let's see what happens. Here is such a detail we get. Blank. Next, we take the next blank, the next bud. I miss again. Now on the left side. Again I say in a checkerboard pattern. Apply. And I wrap it around with clay. You can then bend the buds. You can first make them look up, if it's more convenient. If they interfere with the curved form, they cling to my fingers. I bend once, then at the end I still form the desired bend. So, we look. Here are the buds we have ready, now there are only flowers left. We do the same with flowers. The smallest flowers can be taken first, if any turned out to be quite small. Then big ones themselves. I'll bend them a little first. So, let them to be ready-made curved. So, I just bend a little again through my finger. So this one. So this one. And the last one is left. And this one. Each branch can have a different number of flowers. From 6 to 8, 9 and maybe a little more. Now, I take the clay. Since the bud was located on the left side, now we attach the flower to the right side. I smear it with glue. I make a small drop, dot, so that there is no extra glue. Now I apply the flower. So. And now I wrap it around with clay. I press it well. All the same. If the joint still appears somewhere, it is better to take water and gently wash it so that the stem is smooth. Well, or if the clay is not soft enough. Sometimes the clay is quite hard and it is difficult to smooth with your fingers, somewhere to do exactly. Here. Therefore, if you feel that you need to wash with water, do it more carefully than you need to use. Like this. Now the next flower. I will show you the complete branch assembly as I assemble it all. These flowers. So, if the stem becomes too thick due to the wires, then in the process you can trim some extra ones. By one. Do not cut too much at once, otherwise it will become thin. Here we'll cut another one. So, well, and the next flower. I'll take one that's smaller. So, I apply the flower. And all the same. In general, you can do it in different ways. Attach the flowers to the stem. How can I do this? You can first make a full stem. Roll a sufficiently thick wire with clay. House the fat one, number 24, 22. Number 22 will be thick, number 24. And then, while the clay is still soft, insert one flower carefully. Do not make such a long wire, but cut it off and simply insert it into the clay, into the stem. Here. I like the assembly like this. It comes out more natural. Each flower individually or rather with a wire like this. When the flowers are on the long wire and when they are inserted in the queue. So, I will show you another one and then I will attach 4 flowers, show you what happens. So as not to delay this process. Exactly in the shooting. So, then somewhere, if the white wire is still visible, you can then paint a little. Tone. Grab a little bit. Either immediately, for example, if you feel that you need to grab some more clay somewhere. We take another piece of clay and just add it like this and roll it in. So, here's what happens. Here is such a branch for now. Then we will form the flowers in the desired direction. Here. Well, now I will add the rest of the flowers by myself and show you what happens at the end. What will it look like? Here I have collected all the flowers that we had. But since all the same short pieces of wire, this of course is not enough. Therefore, at the other end, you need to add a wire that is already thicker than this very thin wire. So I'll use more wire. You can use number 24, I will take number 22. It is thicker a little. I'll cut it in half, and I need to rewind the floristic tape, right here, to the base. Fix carefully, either a white tape or a green one. Here I had a piece of green tape. I'll pull a little. And now I'm going to wrap up to attach the wire, like this. I hook the wire here and carefully grab it and connect it. Everything, that's what it turns out. And now we just need to make a finished view. Finish the stem. Just run in longer with the wire. Roll in clay, of course. Here. To do this, we take the same clay and gradually roll it out. Now I'll take the clay. I will use the same clay that was in the extruder. I just took it out of there. And now I take a small amount. You can do a little more. If anything superfluous will be removed. This one. P. So, now, I'll just stretch it out on a wire and then I'll shape it. To do this, of course, it is necessary to smear the wire with glue. Carefully wrap it around. Press at the base, here. And I begin to lower it down. Of course it is finished so that the thickness of the stem is the same as in the beginning. And smear the wire with glue periodically so that the clay does not part. Omit it carefully. Now let's see what length we need for the flower. So that it is not too long, and the excess will just be removed by removing the clay. This, I think, will be enough. So, now, excess clay is immediately hidden under the film. What are we going to do now? We need to level this place, which we have been working on. How will I level it? I'll do it on the edge of the table, like this. That is, I lead a little over the edge of the table and gently roll it with my palm in these movements. At the same time, I align the texture of the stem. A smooth table. Preferably so not to slip and to roll out carefully. We shape it a little with the palm of our hand. And now we wash it with water. We're just going through a little bit of water, especially where there are joints, to align the barrel. So, here I washed it with water. It's noticeable. Wet trunk. A stalk. And this is what we get. Here is such a flower. Fairly even. Neat. If you can see a white wire somewhere, you can see through it. You can just tinge a little grass green paint after complete drying. Here, I'll probably show you now how you can buy flowers in another way. Here. To do this, I will now show you how we will do it. Here. And just so that you choose the option that is most convenient for you. The other way I will do this is to collect flowers. To do this, you need to take the wire number 22. And I'll roll it in clay. The clay is still the same, dark green. Rather, which is more saturated green. So, glue. So, before, I forgot. Before rolling the trunk, of course, we first need to attach the buds. We will attach a couple of buds so that the very top of the base, after all, was quite thin. Otherwise, if we immediately do on the wire on the run-in, the difference will be visible very much. Therefore, I take a couple of buds. I bend one. I'm doing it just like in the previous moment. Just like we used to connect them with clay. I take a small amount of clay. I connect the buds. And I smear it with glue. So, now, I capture it with clay. I press it well. Since my segments are quite short here, it's not very convenient, but anything is possible. So carefully run in. I press it on all sides, stretching it down a little to make a fairly thin transition. Smooth, so that the stem is thin, especially in the beginning. So here's what happened. Now, we need to tape it up. These are the buds. So first I grab the wire, apply the buds carefully. And I grab them and descend carefully so that they still attach. It is better, of course, if the segments and the buds are slightly longer. It is better to cut off the excess later. Since I have quite short results, it is not very convenient to do this. We correct the clay at the beginning, here. Now we need to wrap the stem completely with clay further. We take clay for that purpose. In general, you can do not just the desired length of the stem, but half at a time. So maybe it will even be more convenient and more even will turn out. I pass the glue a little at first and just stretch the clay gently, pressing and rolling a little with my fingers. You can, of course, initially take the necessary thickness with an extruder, but it is quite convenient for me to do so. I just adjust the thickness with my fingers. In the beginning, it is desirable to do a little thinner. Carefully watch that the wire does not slide down here, as it still tries to slide down. And then we make a small thickening. Omit carefully, periodically lubricate with glue so that the clay does not part at the end of the day. So, the thickness of the stamp should not be too thick. Quite thin. it will still be enough to insert the flowers. And we hurry not to delay this process because the clay dries very quickly. Especially if it is colored, it dries faster than unpainted. Therefore, you try to do it faster. Try not to hold pauses. This amount was enough for almost all the desired length. And now, what can I do? Just take it and gently roll it with both hands like this. That's how we walk. Align the stem. Making the desired thickness. Here. And now it is better to wash it with water. At the same time, slightly stretching down so that the stem is not too thick. And now we're going to wash it down a little. Carefully pass between the fingers to align so that there are no wrinkles, no joints, so that the stem is smooth even. That's how it works, just between the fingers carefully, without pressing it in any case. Do not press, so that the clay does not flatten, do not crumple anywhere. Carefully straighten. Smooth. We wash it out. What happened? It turned out to be such a smooth stem. Now we leave it to dry so that the clay stops being wet. And then we will start inserting flowers. While the clay is soft, you need to attach the flowers.